ब्रेक से पहले हमने बहुत सारे चर्चा की, हमने एचआईवी के बारे में बात किया, हमने अंडरस्टैंड किया कि हाउ डज एचआईवी ट्रांसमिशन एक्चुअली हैपन। हमने थोड़ा टचअप किया प्रेप के बारे में, हमने थोड़ा टचअप किया कॉन्सेप्ट्स जैसे यू इज टू यू का क्या मतलब होता है, वायरल लोड का क्या मतलब होता है, एआरटी मेडिकेशन क्या होती है और क्यों लेना चाहिए। और हमने फिर थोड़ा टचअप किया एसटीआईज पे, डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ एसटीआईज पे। अभी हमारा क्वेश्चन जो ब्रेक से पहले हमने पूछा था वो ये थे, दो सवाल थे। एक तो हमने नोटिस किया है कि अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स जब लोग प्रेप पे होते हैं वो कॉन्डम यूज करना बंद कर देते हैं, बिकॉज दे डोंट सी द रेलेवेंस ऑफ इट एंड दे आर लाइक कि अगर हम प्रेप पे ऑलरेडी है तो हमें कॉन्डम क्यों पहनने की जरूरत है। That is
Correct.
the first thing that I wanted to tackle. And the other question that because I wanted to ask, because हमने इस conversation के through बहुत सारा बातें किया है, when it how to navigate HIV when it comes to dating, when it comes to marriage,
Hmm.
how do we sort of make sure that we are not transmitting the infection to our partners. The question I wanted to ask you is, and we also covered a whole lot about the just the sheer amount of stigma that is present in society. So given all this, I just wanted to understand from you a little bit about the laws that are in place for people with HIV, that are in place to empower them, to make sure that there are systems in place where they can go to and they can sort of vocalize their issues and their grievances. So if you could
Yeah.
just talk a little bit about that.
So I'll talk about our country, India. In India, we have HIV/AIDS Prevention and Control Act of 2017. It is basically to protect the rights of people affected with HIV or who's got AIDS, and it is basically to also to prevent. It aims also to prevent the spread of the disease. Okay, but when we're talking about this, there are also some social determinants like discrimination and all of those things have also been addressed in that act. I'll just very briefly tell you what that act is because it's a very big file and you when you read it, you will be in a much better place to understand it word by word. Or maybe we can have another web series where we talk about the legality surrounding the HIV. But until then, basically it tells you that it if a person who is found HIV positive, no one can compel that person to disclose their status, and no one can actually, no physician or any healthcare provider for that matter, except for the person who they are going to, for their treatment, can basically share about your status when you are present there and only after your permission, and nobody other than that. After that, it also talks about discrimination, where if you are at a workplace and if they find out that you're HIV positive, you can technically drag them to the court because it is against, like, the act talks about some anti-discrimination laws as well. And it also talks about treatment that no PLHIV person who's got tested with HIV can be, devoid of ART medication. And also about the testing part, testing cannot be required for employment or healthcare or education, except when you're going for a blood donation. Then they will obviously do your HIV test. But other than that, they cannot do that. And you also see a lot of people who talk, have these hate speeches, but who are actually very mean, very rude, very judgmental, and who can go to any extent to, affect mentally or physically people who to the people who are got tested with HIV. So it also talks about that and how you can actually take actions about against it. So there are some mechanisms that the act tells you about, where how you can approach at different levels, at district or state levels. There are complaint officers who are established. You can also go and if you don't know where to start, you can reach out to CBOs. You can reach out to organizations who are helping people with HIV to to get the ART or and other social scheme helps. So you can reach out to them, and if there is any instance of discrimination, stigma, or hate towards you, you can literally go file a complaint and drag those people to the court. And also, it also talks about, children under the age of 18 have the right to live in a shared household, and even if they are HIV positive. And yeah, so there are a lot of things that that act covers, and I would suggest, if you are interested in, if you're a public health worker or if you're working in the space of HIV, STI, then you should definitely read the act. HIV is rampant. People talk about it being controlled, but we see in the community, we see the stigma around it. Even if they're not positive, there's still a lot of stigma and discrimination around it. So it's also good to empower yourself, to make yourself aware about what are my rights, what is the right of my friend who is HIV positive, because he probably or they probably can't think properly because they just tested positive. But because I am their friend, I can be there with proper, accurate knowledge about their right and help them to, come out of it in a much better way. So yeah, so these are certain things, and I think it's a good document to go through, because it actually helps you to a certain extent to understand that you have support, and that will help you to deal with a lot of anxiety when it comes to HIV.
You know, I really like the fact that you said that even if you don't have HIV, right, you can still go and read it. It's good to have that knowledge, especially
Yeah.
when it comes to, supporting your friends or your family or anybody who either has HIV or is struggling with HIV and, doesn't know what to do. Because I think I really love this. We also had another webinar session just like a few days ago where I was talking to someone else, and they also, talked about the importance of community and community coming together to helping each other. And
Yeah.
I just really love the thought and just the whole the idea around it that you need to like be there and help even if you don't
Yes.
have it. So that is something that I feel like really resonated with me through this conversation, and it also reminded me of that conversation. The other thing that I wanted to know from you, as I mentioned, that when people are on prep, they're very negligent
Hmm.
and they don't want to use
Hmm.
condom. A lot of times, through our outreach efforts, we don't our we've heard feedback such as
Hmm.
मैं condom नहीं पहनना है क्योंकि इसमें अच्छा feel नहीं आता है, and
नहीं
these
आता.
kind of things, and then people
Hmm.
are just very like just extremely like careless about it, or it's just not something that is a priority to them when they are indulging in any kind of sexual activity. So if you could just talk a little bit about that.
So, PrEP, as I said earlier, it is only for, preventing HIV infection. It is not for any other STI. And it is taken by someone who is HIV negative. But when we say that I am on PrEP, that doesn't mean you're invincible. You know, the good part or the bad part about our body or our biology is that your body can get immune to any medication anytime. So I mean, you don't know when there are cases where, very, very few cases though, but where people did, say that I feel the prep was isn't working on me. There was a case I remember in very early years of my working in, on the grassroots, that there was this one person who was on prep, and he never got tested for a long time, but he was found to be HIV positive later. And he was on prep, like a proper course of prep. So, not to scare anyone, it's just that it's always good to be careful, even if you're on prep. It's and 99 times the prep works, you know. So that doesn't mean we become negligent. And also, we are not only talking about HIV here. People are scared about HIVs because there is a lot of stigma, and it is. But people forget that STIs are equally harmful. Like, at least with HIV, I mean, I'm going to say it in a very optimistic manner. If you manage, you can have more kids who are, HIV negative. But if you have an STI, and if that STI is concurrent, I mean, recurring again and again, it can affect your genitals, it can affect your gonads, it can affect your reproductive, entire reproductive system to an extent where you cannot have kids. Then there are STIs which can affect other organs of your body, leading to its failure. And people just think STI curable ho jata. Yes, it is curable, but that doesn't mean you start hosting them in your body, right? And so that is why prep with a condom is very, very important, because it's very evident that there are research which is talking about, uh, you know, as I mentioned earlier, gonorrhea becoming resistant, and there are other STIs like chlamydia, there is, and there was genital herpes and so on, which can actually impact your other organs. You can have, gonorrhea of your eye as well. I mean, we know the kind of sexual activities people engage in. So why do you want to risk your life? Understand, it is very important that people also understand the extent to which other STIs can also impact your body. It's just that HIV का stigma इतना ज़्यादा है, HIV, because it is there for the rest of your life, people are worried. कल को अगर HIV becomes curable, people will, I hope they don't do this, but people may become very negligent about it as well. So, and that's the scare, that the lack of knowledge about STIs is problematic here. So that is why we know podcasts like webinars like this are important, because it's important to shed light on things that people mostly ignore. So STIs is something we need to worry about, and that is why PrEP alone is not enough. Using Having oral sex without condom is not advisable, because STIs can be equally problematic, if not more.
I think that's very well put. I also think the reason why there's one of the reasons I feel like there's a lot of stigma about HIV, or rather people, taking HIV more seriously and taking PrEP. This is probably a very minute reason, but there is also a lot of advertisements, and there's just a lot of
Hmm.
things that have been pushed around HIV, right? Because at one point, that was a big epidemic. And
Absolutely.
and there are a lot of people are very sad to say, but a lot of people lost lives to it. So I think that's why,
Hmm.
there's a big campaign. So that's why there is a lot more information in some way about HIV as compared to,
Hmm.
like, let's say, other STIs. There's a lack of information, and a lot of people are not fully aware that,
Hmm.
these things also persist, because of which then they don't take that extra precaution where they don't wear that condom, right? So that is one thing that I wanted to bring out. The other thing, because we've talked about PrEP, is, and we've also talked about ART. I think this is more in relation to ART, because when we talk about ART, we people also talk about adherence. So I
Yes.
wanted to understand from you what exactly adherence is and why is it needed, like when you are on this sort of medication regime, so as to say.
So I'll just put it in a very simple way, that adherence is important for you to live a fulfilling life. It's as simple as that. So, how do you lead a long, healthy, and fulfilling life? It starts with staying on the treatment and taking the medication daily. Regular checkups are important, for you to see if those medications are working and if the viral load, is suppressed, so that your overall health is important. So, what is basically adherence? I think we need to also talk about that very briefly. It's when you are adhering to a certain treatment, you're following a treatment without a break. And that is what we're talking about, the level of adherence. There are people who have like 100% adherence. There are people whose adherence isn't great. So they're not following the treatment. They're not, on the treatment properly. And that is where the problem happens, because we've been talking that after the point, if you stop the line. So there are three lines of treatment: the first line, second line, third line treatment. There are various drugs combination in all these lines. I won't go into the detail because it's too, technical. It's when you are on the first line of treatment, you have one medication. Most of the people have one medication. And if you are not following that routine or that regime properly, you are on and off the medication. You're taking it one day on like in the morning, then the other day you're taking in the evening. Your timings are like all over the place. Medication, you're missing medication. Then there are higher chances that your body will stop responding to that medication. That basically means that medication will not work on your body. Then you maybe, have to be put on second line of medication where there is more drugs. Why put yourself through that much of pain when you can stay on, first line for a very, very long time? So this is the crux, I would like to say, why adherence is important. The more the levels, like the second line and the third line, higher the line you go, the more medication it increases. Sometimes you have to take twice a day. It all depends. There are a lot of tests to find out that. So if you're on the first line where you're taking one medication a day, adhere to it, follow that regime, because there is a reason why it is that way. These medicines are very powerful. Imagine if you continue this behavior throughout the line, then there are high chances that there would be no medication to help you. That is why when you start a medication initially, it's important to stick to that routine, that regime, so that you save yourself from the latter trauma, the latter distress that you will go through if there is, a blip in the virus, or if the body stops reacting to the first, level of medication.
I think you've explained that very nicely in words that I would say people would understand, like very easy and concise. What I would also wanted to say was, when we talk about HIV and HIV treatment, I think it's also important for us to acknowledge just how far we've come along the way, right? The sheer development that has happened in this field is also just so extraordinary, and I'm sure that there's only more developments, more positive developments that are sort of going to come along the way. Before we close, there's just one question that I wanted to ask is how does someone sort of uh, when I think one thing that we have noticed that does happen is younger people, I think in some ways do take more precaution because they
Hmm.
do feel like, okay, we want to date and we do want to get married at some point, right? But what we've noticed is the older the people get, sometimes they tend to be more lax because they're like, oh, kitni hi zindagi baki, how does it matter? And so they will either, if they are on prep, they'll stop taking prep, or they will stop wearing condoms, or if they are on ART, they won't follow it properly, or they'll slip. So, we have noticed these kind of things. So, what I wanted to ask is, the importance of safer sex practices, even as you're aging, so that you can live a fulfilling life with HIV, even if you're older. Because there are people who are like 80 and 90 and have HIV. That's very much there, right? So, I just wanted you
Hmm.
to like shed a little bit of light on this.
See, Aishwarya, like, someone who's older, as you said, they somewhere have kind of been like, ah, theek hai, abhi to jaane ka time aa gaya. That's how people usually say. Then why to take care? And, what is it what that I have to do now? I've done, been there, done that, all of those things. Here, I see how a lot of mental health plays a part in this picture. So that is something that, throughout this podcast, somewhere maybe I've missed to say that mental health is very, very important. And for you to maintain that life state where you want to live a healthy life, because giving up becomes very easy when you get tested positive. And there are people I have also personally known who, ended their lives because they were diagnosed, tested positive. So mental health becomes very, very important and that is why it is one of the cornerstones of HIV treatment. That no matter how older or younger you are, there are times where you're like, yeah, stop. I just want to stop this medication. It's too much. आई कांट हैव दिस पिल एवरी डे, मैं रोज नहीं खा सकता, हो गया अब तो मेरा, बस तंग आ गया हूँ। देर आर लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स दैट कल्मिनेट, बहुत सारी चीजें साथ में आ जाती है, जैसे वर्क प्रेशर है, ये है, खुद तो नहीं मर, लाइक सुसाइड इज नॉट इजी, और किलिंग योरसेल्फ इज नॉट इजी। तो क्या है, चलो HIV पॉजिटिव, दवाई खाना बंद कर देता हूँ, मर जाऊंगा। So there is a lot of stress, like एक तो HIV पॉजिटिव, यहाँ पे काम सही से नहीं चल रहा, ये नहीं हो रहा, तबीयत ठीक नहीं है, बिकॉज दैट स्टिग्मा दैट वी टॉकिंग अबाउट ना स्टिल प्लेज अ रोल इन यू, कि लाइक अरे यार HIV हो गया, अब तो जिंदगी वैसे भी खराब है, इसमें ये भी करना है वो भी करना है, नो मैटर हम कितना भी बाहर से दिखाए कि नहीं हम खुश हैं, कहीं ना कहीं वो आउंस ऑफ ये होता है कि हो सकता है कि अरे यार खत्म तो है, जिंदगी वैसी तो खत्म है, हम मजाक मजाक में बोल देते हैं कि लाइक पीपल हु से लाफिंगली कि लाइक जिंदगी तो खत्म हो ही गई है, HIV हो गया, नो मैटर बाहर से वो कितना भी दिखाए कुछ भी। तो mental health becomes very very important for people who are living with HIV, and there is no harm in seeking help, there is no कोई छोटा नहीं हो जाता, कोई गलत चीज नहीं है, कोई आपको पागल घोषित नहीं कर रहा, no matter what age it is, there is, you are on this earth for definitely for something, right? And you have to find your purpose. I personally believe you have to find your purpose, because that's when you will not let all these things come to you, especially people who are in the older age group. Your life story is going to be inspiring to so many people, younger generation. I know so many people who are on HIV ART treatment, whose lives have inspired so many other younger people, like who also say कि अगर पहले ART होता तो मैं ऐसे नहीं होता, पहले के मेडिकेशंस के अभी के मेडिकेशंस है होते तो मेरी हालत ये नहीं होती, मुझे ये वाले मेडिकेशन ज्यादा बेटर लगते हैं, मेरी लाइफ बहुत अच्छी होती। तो these stories are very inspiring, and I would say that no matter how old or young one is, the life struggle is always for PL-HIV person is always very motivating to someone who's recently got diagnosed, or who's struggling to अपने आप को accept करने में जो struggle है उसकी, उसमें help बहुत करता है। So to be that kind of a person or a source of inspiration, it's good to for you to also stay strong, and it's important that you seek help, mental health, counseling, or for you to be able to help others, and especially even for younger people who are diagnosed, recently diagnosed, it can be very, very stressful. So you have to, other than the HIV, ART, all these counseling, take mental health guidance sometimes. Even if there could be certain emotions that आपने कभी disclose नहीं करे और वो थोड़े time में ऊपर ऊपर आते हैं, like in the surface. So take help for that, so that it will help you in a longer run. And yeah, so and also lastly, I would like to add is that eat healthy and reduce your alcohol. I would never say stop, because it's absolutely your choice. And reduce alcohol content as much as possible. Reduce your smoking. If you're injecting drugs, please don't do that. And try to take help. It is difficult for the community to take help, like directly. Find your sources, reach out to them, take help, get out of your addiction as much as you can, or make it manageable if possible. And yeah, I hope people who are listening or who watch our video, this webinar, understand that there is support available. It can be difficult to get sometimes, but it's always good to, reach out. Don't block help before you even seek it. Don't say कि कोई मदद नहीं करने वाला. पूछ के देखो. You never know. There are so many people who are working in the community, and the community is willing to help. There are people, there are CBOs who are out there जो आपकी मदद करने के लिए तैयार है, to seek help, no matter what your age is, no matter what your gender, your sexuality is. When it comes to community, the community sticks together, so please don't forget that.
Very nicely put. And I totally agree with you. Mental health, but also nutritional health, both are important. Both go hand in hand. So
Yes,
definitely, need to take care of both those things. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much, Atul. Thank you for removing time
thank
out of your day. I'm sure you have like n number of important things to do. And
thank you.
before you go, I just want to ask you one last thing. If you could say, just give one advice, or if you just have one piece of, a little something that you want to give to the people who will be listening to this webinar, what would that thought or what would that advice be?
Uh, you know, I would say educate yourself. Educate yourself about HIV. Educate yourself, regardless of if you have it, if you don't have it. Educate yourself about STI, safe sex practice, because knowledge is power, and that is something that we have. The community has. It has a wealth of knowledge. It has lived experiences. Talk to people from the community. Don't discriminate within the community. And yeah, we actually have to, together we can actually create a world where HIV is understood and not feared. That is very, very important, because like any other health issue, it can be taken care of. And don't subject others to, more mental stress or any kind of discrimination because of your lack of knowledge and your lack of understanding of HIV. That's it.